Chapter 26, 10 Years Later. The picture of Pinocchio's puppet. The letter arrived on the morning of Noah's 18th birthday. He was lying in bed, remembering how he always used to wake up very early on this day when he was a child and run downstairs to see what presents might be waiting for him. But he decided not to do that this year. He was a man now, after all, and it would be a bit silly to rush downstairs too quickly. He smiled when he remembered the way his mother always used to make him a special birthday breakfast. But this was one of those recollections that didn't make him feel sad anymore. If anything, it made the smile on his face grow even wider as he recalled those happy memories from the first 8 years of his life that had helped to shape him into the person he'd become. He was really very lucky, he decided. Some people had no happy memories at all. He had 8 years with his mother and 18 with his father. Not bad, all things considered. He climbed out of bed and stepped across to the desk that stood on the other side of the room. That's a surprise, he thought, seeing his chisel sitting on the corner of the desk, for he was sure he had left it downstairs in his workshop the night before. Did Dad bring it up here in the night? A tap on the door made him turn round, and a moment later his father came in to wish him a happy birthday. There were presents from Auntie Joan, Cousin Mark, Uncle Teddy, and a rather surprising envelope too. "Who's this from?" asked Noah, holding it in his hands and staring at it as if it was a time bomb that might go off at any moment. "I don't know," said his father. "It arrived by special delivery first thing. You'll have to open it to find out." Noah slipped his finger under the seal and lifted out a long document, which he scanned quickly before opening his eyes wide and going back to read it carefully from the start. "What is it?" asked his father. And Noah simply shook his head and handed it across. "I think you'll need to read this for yourself," he said. The following day, Noah Barleywater collected the keys to Pinocchio's toy shop and made his way towards the village. His father had wanted to accompany him, but he said no, not today. He wanted to go there on his own. He says, "Tools required for carpentry." It had been 10 long years since he had last been inside, and it astonished him to remember that day when he was a child and arrived in the village to meet the master craftsman, and the number of strange occurrences that had taken place. He had promised to come back and visit the old man again, but somehow, once he got home, the memory of that day had seemed to dissolve in his mind until it almost disappeared. In fact, he almost never thought of it again in all the years in between, not even when he told his father that he wanted to learn more about woodwork and carving, and had organised an area of the basement where he taught himself all the rudimentary secrets of planning and shaving, chipping and cutting, painting and designing, all the things that went into making toys of his own. He'd become very good at it too, and sold them at spring festivals and the various market days around the town. In fact, it wasn't until the letter arrived on the morning of his 18th birthday, telling him he would inherit the entire place, lock, stock and barrel, that all those memories came flooding back. There was one proviso on the inheritance, though, that he reopen the shop and continue to trade in wooden toys and puppets. No plastic, no metal, just wood. "Well, I can do that," he said, thrilled by this unexpected gift, for it had been his intention to make a career as a toy maker anyway, and here was the perfect place to get started. The shop was locked when he arrived, and he put the key in the door, opening it slowly, thinking that he'd better oil the creak. He glanced up, and the bell gave a deep sigh, and then an exaggerated ring. He smiled at it, thinking he was going to have a word with it about its attitude. He wasn't surprised to find that inside the door, the countertops were covered in dust. Well, nothing that a good spring clean won't fix, he thought to himself, and set about taking all the old toys and puppets off the shelves and storing them neatly in the back room while he began the process of restoring the shop to its former glory and beginning his new life as a master toy maker. He spent the rest of his day there, of course, happy and cheerful, working with wood and chisel and plane, a life filled with joy. Ooh, he spent the rest of his days there, of course, happy and cheerful, working with wood and chisel and plane, a life filled with joy, as all lives should be. And, unlike his predecessor, he never made a toy that didn't sell. For quite soon, Pinocchio's toy shop, he kept the name, became one of the most successful businesses in a 53-mile radius. Indeed, the only puppets that were never taken off the shelves over the years were that curious cast of characters that the old man's papa, Geppetto, had carved and who he had introduced him to on the day they'd first met. Mrs. Shields, Mr. Wickle, the Prince, Mr. Quaker, Dr. Wings, all of them went undisturbed. No customer ever picked them up. No visitor ever even glanced in their direction. It was almost as if they didn't see them at all. But Noah kept them there as a memento because they belonged to a day he didn't want to forget ever again. In fact, everything the old man had left behind was still present in the shop on the morning that Noah arrived, and he cared for and looked after every piece as if it was made of gold. Except for one thing, that is, which Noah didn't even notice when he first stepped inside. A single wooden puppet that had sat on the counter gathering dust throughout those 10 long years before the inheritance became his. A puppet of a boy with straight, neat legs, jointed at the knees, and a smooth, cylindrical body. It was sitting there when Noah first entered the shop. He left the door wide open as he surveyed his new home, allowing anyone to step inside or run out. And when he turned around again, as if by magic, Pinocchio's puppet had disappeared.